Many believe the true champions of industry are the entrepreneurs, the inventors who develop the ideas that change the way we live. And in many ways, they are. But where would they be without the financing behind them to bring those ideas from concept to market? The true champions might just be the investment bankers, people like Dean Woodman. While he may not be a household name now, you may be a lot more familiar with him by the end of this story.
I was born in 1928, back when the Earth's crust was still cooling. And like a lot of Depression-era couples, my parents split around 1933. Probably the first important thing in my life after that, in terms of changing the trajectory of my life, was my mother remarried in 1941. And during the war, my new stepfather was, and our family was stationed in Atlanta, Georgia. He was an officer. And in the middle of the war, he was transferred to Burma. And being an only child, they decided to send me off to the boarding school that he had gone to in Providence, Rhode Island, a Quaker school called Moses Brown School. Going to Moses Brown was in retrospect, a life-changing event. And because from there I went to Amherst College, and from there I was able to get into the Merrill Lynch training program in 1950 when I graduated. And the Korean War started in 1950, and so rather than be drafted, I joined the Naval Air Corps and flew in the Navy for 5.5 years, and then went back to Merrill Lynch in 1956 in New York, stayed there for 10 years in the investment banking department. Finally talked my way into opening a investment banking branch office for Merrill Lynch in San Francisco in 1965. That was a fairly creative event for me because Wall Street didn't have branch banking offices anywhere. None of the firms did, Merrill Lynch included. Proved to be quite successful, and within 5 or 6 years, every Wall Street firm had opened a branch banking office in San Francisco. Partially also because of the emergence of Silicon Valley. The whole technology revolution was beginning to take place at that time. We took Gap public in a combination with Lehman Brothers. I was also banker for Douglas Aircraft before it was merged into McDonnell Douglas. I was banker to several of the large banks, Bank of America, Security Pacific in California. And I was also heavily involved with the Howard Hughes corporate empire. And I never met Howard Hughes. I was scheduled to once, and as was his custom, he ducked out. But a lot of people had that happen to them. So anyway, it worked very well for Merrill Lynch and for me. And then in '78, I decided to take a giant leap and leave the world's largest securities firm for a startup securities firm. And that was pretty scary, frankly, because I had a wife and 4 children, and it was a big risk. But people in the banking business are risk takers. You don't really become an investment banker unless you're a risk taker. So I took the risk, and it worked out wonderfully well. And I really retired in about 2000, really. I retired fully.
While Woodman may have retired from the investment banking world, he didn't retire from investing. In fact, admittedly, his best investment to date has been in his own children, in more ways than one.
I've been an investor in a lot of public companies over the years, and a lot of them, my investments turned out well, some not so well. I invested in a lot of private companies, and surely the most successful private company was started by my son Nick, and it's called GoPro. It makes the GoPro camera, which has become a phenomenon in the camera world. So it's hard to say whether I had more success with the big companies on the West Coast or the smaller companies. But my biggest hit, of course, has been GoPro by far, financing my son, who had incidentally started another company after he got out of college. I and some of my friends invested $4 million in that, and it failed. And he went off surfing to Australia, and when he came back, he said, "Dad, I've got a great idea for a new company." I said, "You must be kidding. We just lost $4 million on your last company." And he said, "But this is a better idea." And sure enough, it's turned out to be a pretty good idea.
Outside of his work, Woodman's biggest passion might be sailing.
When I went to San Francisco, and I started reading sailing books and sailing magazines, and I got the yen to go sailing, so I went up to San Francisco Bay, and it's a pretty windy, blustery place to sail. And if you can sail in San Francisco Bay, you're probably safe to go, good to go almost anywhere. And so I sailed on the bay, and then I bought a sailboat. So we sailed that boat, the Phantom, for 32 years. And then when we moved here to Palm Beach, I felt that the boat we had in San Francisco wasn't really ideal for sailing here. It's not air conditioned, and so I bought another boat in this for this better suited to this area. It's a little larger and it's air conditioned, and I have it here, berthed here at the Palm Beach Yacht Club.
At the age of 86, Woodman hasn't lost his desire to find the next GoPro. And who knows, he may have already found it.
I got down here to Palm Beach, and the weather's great, and you go to the beach, and you play golf, and you go sailing, and you do all the things that you do when you're retired. And it soon became apparent to me that I've been investing all my life, and but there probably aren't many investment opportunities down here. It's not exactly the same as Silicon Valley. I met a doctor, John Welton, told me that he had invested in a little thing that's now called Biltmore Technologies. So it sounded kind of interesting, and I've decided I've invested some money in that company, and we're developing a thing called eye polish, a technology which will allow ladies to change the color of their nail polish via an iPhone. And that could be pretty interesting. I've quizzed a lot of ladies about that, and everybody's pretty enthusiastic about it. The technology actually could be applied to the color of automobiles or the color of clothing if the technology is woven into the fabric. So it has a lot of potential.
From big companies to big banks to GoPro to eye polish and beyond, Dean Woodman is not just Nick Woodman's father, the father of GoPro, but a true champion of industry.